Psychological safety, is it real or is it just something that some organizations talk about? I'm here to tell you that psychological safety is real. According to Wikipedia, psychological safety is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for making mistakes. They're free to speak up with their ideas, ask questions, or address any concerns that they may have. Now the question becomes, what are the actions each leader need to take in order to create psychological safeties with your teams? We're diving into all of that in this video and more. So why is it so magical to have psychological safety on your teams, your divisions, your regions, or inside your organization? The first reason is people feel free to speak up in meetings. How many times have you asked a question in a meeting and you got no response? It was like, Bueller, 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 and nobody says anything. Traditionally, that means your team is lacking psychological safety, but there's a fix for that. When you have psychological safety, teams understand that their opinion matters. They're a part of shaping the environment that they work in every single day. And remember, people support what they help create. So if you have an opportunity or an upcoming project, share that with the team. The more information that you share, the more that it drives psychological safety because they know what to expect. And if they get an opportunity to help shape that project, they're going to support it. Teams with psychological safety work together, collaborate, which drives additional innovation. The teams that collaborate get to the best idea. The teams that collaborate operate more efficiently. Teams with psychological safety take repetitive tasks and make them much more efficient. They take on the toughest challenges and solve them much quicker than teams without psychological safety. Another benefit that most CEOs and shareholders love to talk about is when you have psychological safety, organizations have increased productivity and profitability. More goes to the bottom line because of all the things that I stated earlier, because of efficiencies being driven, because obstacles are seen even before they get to the leadership level. The workers see those challenges coming and they address them quickly. As a leader, you just have to make sure you're listening. These are real life benefits to employees and often they're happier and healthier. So how do you create psychological safety and what actions can you take today? First, it's important to understand that there is a requirement and it is tough. I understand because it requires you spending time with your teams. And you all know, as leaders, time is the last thing that we feel like we have enough of. You can't control the amount of time, but you can control what you do with your time. And there are 4 steps that I talk about in a previous video that you can find here that will give you the 4 steps to creating deeper relationships, which we call connection. So in order to connect, you have to take these 4 steps. The first, which is having regular one-on-ones. And I break down those one-on-ones to what we call a 60-30-10. 60% is productivity, 30% is career development, and 10% is about the relationship. The second step is having skip level meetings. That means you're meeting with your direct reports with their employees. The third meeting we call breaking bread. It's a very informal meeting. It's all about developing the relationship and taking that to the next level. It's a great opportunity to find out what motivates your employees, what their purpose is, what drives them, what gets them out of bed in the morning. And then the last and most important step is conducting regular stay interviews. A year is plenty. Those of you that don't understand what a stay interview is, I will say this. In my experience, the stay interview is the most valuable of the 4 steps. And in fact, you're going to gain more information inside of the stay interview than you get in the other 3 meetings combined. I have learned of debilitating diseases. I've learned about people that wanted to leave. And it's important to catch that before they're out the door because at that point, it's too late. You're doing an exit interview and that's not a great step to driving connection. Now, how do we do these 4 steps? First off, you have to be consistent. Showing up every single day and doing these things. Choosing your employee over anything or anyone externally is critical. You have to be very deliberate. And we hear about it all the time. Be deliberate with your time. You have to do this, you have to do that. But this is serious. If you want to develop psychological safety and gain all of those benefits that we spoke about earlier, you have to connect with your employees. That is what drives trust. Now, developing psychological safety is really simple. The challenge is the things that you have to do are very difficult. And that's because it's going to require your time. Now you have to prioritize these things, but if you do that, you're going to be on the path to developing psychological safety in your organizations. Now remember, for relationships, there is no quick fix. It doesn't happen overnight. But with time and taking consistent, deliberate actions, you absolutely will be on that path to developing psychological safety. And don't mistake these meetings for trying to be liked. The goal is to be first respected, then liked. Don't reverse that. In my opinion, it's one of the most dangerous things that a leader can do is seeking out to be liked before being respected. When you're respected, quite often, being liked falls in line down the road. In order to be respected, it's going to require you to deliver, at times, difficult feedback. There's going to be a level of discomfort. I recognize that. Most of us are human, and it's hard to tell people things that they don't want to hear. But you have to understand it is one of the more critical things for their development and growth. Because when you're able to deliver them, some cases, really tough feedback, they're going to know where you're coming from. That is going to be the step that you need to take to start developing trust. So many leaders shy away from providing difficult feedback. Those leaders tell themselves a lie that, well, I didn't want to give them that tough feedback because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, or I didn't think they can handle that. Pay attention to the lies that you tell yourself, because usually you don't want to provide that feedback because it's discomfort to you. There's one thing that I know. The road to growth is at the intersection of pain and support. And that discomfort is real, but you just have to fight through that and provide the feedback. In time, they will respect you. When someone knows that you're going to give them the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's where the path to psychological safety really kicks off. If you're not spending time with these 4 steps, these 4 meetings, it's going to be really tough for you to get to psychological safety. This last section is going to be something that we add to our videos. This is going to be a Q&A session where I take some of the more frequently asked questions and go ahead and respond to them through these videos. The first question I get often is, how important is it for leaders to really be vulnerable? It's critical. If you can't fall on your sword, how in the world can you ask your teams to fall on their sword? Leaders go first in everything that we do. So when it comes to apologizing or saying, hey, you know what, I screwed this one up, criticize yourself publicly, because as you make mistakes and own up to them, that's going to give the signal to the rest of the team that, you know what, making mistakes isn't so bad. 1, you prove you're not perfect, so don't try and create that image. 2, you show that you're human, which is really important because sometimes as employees, they look at leaders and go, they're not really human. Well, that's an unfortunate opportunity that you've missed. So fall on your sword, be vulnerable, say you're sorry, say my bad, whatever is your terminology, go ahead and do it publicly. It's very important. Another question that I get is providing examples of organizations where there was a failure to speak up. And I'm going to give you one organization, but 2 separate incidents. And that was with NASA. One in 1986 with the Challenger tragedy, and then in 2003 with the Space Shuttle Columbia. And in both cases, there were 7 astronauts aboard each shuttle that passed away. And in both cases, there was an engineer who spoke up about a malfunction that they were aware of, and their boss shut them down. Had they felt the freedom to be able to speak up and to share that information, or more importantly, had their supervisors felt comfortable of taking it up to the next level, potentially saving these 7 astronauts on each one of the shuttles. While those both are pretty aggressive examples, I give you those examples because if psychological safety is that important, that in life and death situations, like in the space program, if people are afraid to speak up in a life and death situation, what about individuals and organizations that are not life and death? Psychological safety is real. Developing trust is real. It is imperative that you as a leader take that seriously and make that a priority inside of your organization so that individuals feel free to make mistakes, to speak up, to raise concerns, to voice their concerns, because you're going to get a lot of information, and more importantly, you're going to get so much information that you're going to be able to make better and educated decisions down the road. The last question is, how do leaders foster an environment where psychological safety is prevalent? And I'm going to go back to the framework that we talk about called Leadership Square. And Leadership Square is essentially this. Leaders go first, and it's made up of 2 primary points. One is culture, and the second is connection. Remember, culture is just a set of expectations, values, and beliefs. It's your standards. while connection is about developing deep relationships. So in order to foster that environment, really focus on Leadership Square, which drives culture and connection. I've got an entire video on Leadership Square and how we create and develop, and more importantly, measure culture. You can go ahead and check that out. The link will be down in the comments section. So as usual, please like, comment, and share. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel where we're going to talk everything about leadership development.